Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 432 of the Health Detective Podcast. We are moving right along here through the 400s. I got a couple of quick announcements for you guys. I'm going to try to rapid fire them so we can get right to our guest today. One, if you happen to be watching this live, welcome. Please say hello in the chat. But if you're watching this live or shortly afterwards, please know that on Saturday, August 2nd, we have a Health Space Unmasked event happening. If you're like, what the heck is a Health Space Unmasked? I'll be referring to it as HSU from here on out. HSU is something that we only do about 10 to 11 times per year. It's on the first Saturday of each month, usually with the exception of July and December. And we have kind of this nerdy, fun conversation on a Saturday morning. So we have a presenter come in. It usually lasts for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then there is a Q&A afterwards. So it's kind of different than, a 45-minute webinar or something like that. You get to experience more of the nitty-gritty and the details than you typically would on most, like, even podcasts or, again, webinars or workshops. So this Saturday, August 2nd, is going to be none other than our very own Dr. Lori Rose. She is the creator of multiple of our advanced courses. I think she has now been on the podcast more than any other guest in all 432 episodes. And she is just such a cool person. If you don't know her, she's like this brilliant hippie that could totally school you probably in anything fact-wise or like on a game of Jeopardy or something like that. But then also you could just picture her in the woods of Oregon picking mushrooms or something like that. And if you don't understand that yet, just come watch Dr. Lori. It'll make sense within about 10 seconds of listening to her. So that's fdntraining.com/HSU live, fdntraining.com/HSU live. It's a free event, so we encourage you to attend. Come on and hang out with us. One other thing, this is a much bigger event that will be happening in August. It's August 12th and 14th. No, I did not mess up my dates. We're doing a gap day for you guys just to keep it not so crazy. We are doing 4 events, I believe, on each day, August 12th and August 14th. This is our Clinical Advisor event. If you don't know what a Clinical Advisor is, they are some of the people at FDN as graduates that we trust with some of our toughest cases. So people like our guest, Rebekah and I, we go to these individuals when we're stuck on something or we're like, what does this lab marker say? So of course you get training in the FDN course for how to do a lot of stuff, but some people, well, they like to take that to the next level, and that's our clinical advisors. So we are doing a whole event dedicated to them, again, on August 12th and 14th. You can go to fdntraining.com/edge, I believe, for that one, or just scan the QR code. It's right above my head up here. And I believe that's fdntraining.com/edge. If it is not correct, my lovely assistant here, Tracy, will probably correct me in the chat. And I see Mackenzie saying hello, which is great. So we will get you guys the right link. If I am incorrect on that one, my bad. But definitely the QR code is right. So click on that or just scan it on your phone and get to that event. It's going to be awesome. If you're someone that likes diving very deep into case studies and seeing what's actually working currently with the best science in 2025, that's who would want to get on that. So yes, I'm right. fdntraining.com/edge. And I did all these ads in less than 4 minutes. Let's get to our guest today. Rebekah Lund is the founder of Bloom Wellness Center in Houston, Texas, and a passionate advocate for proactive root cause healing. You actually probably live very close to Dr. Lori Rose, so I should hook you two up. With over 15 years in the holistic health field, she began her journey as a clinical thermographer in 2009 and expanded her expertise as a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner in 2020. At Bloom, Rebekah leads a team dedicated to empowering both women and men through non-invasive breast and full-body thermography, advanced ultrasound screenings, and functional health programs focused on optimizing gut health, hormone balance, and whole body vitality. Rebekah, welcome to the show, my friend.
Here I am. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
I'm going to edit my first question just a little bit, not in a confusing way, but I would love to know how the heck you got into all of this work, because it's pretty straightforward enough when someone becomes an FDN, had their own health issues, and then get into this. But to mix this with thermography, I think is very interesting. So when I say, how did you get into this? I mean, even that kind of stuff beforehand. Was that just something that, hey, you thought it'd be a good enough job, or was there something that
No,
happened
it's very
in life that-
personal. So my mom was a naturopath, a traditional naturopath and nutritionist. And so I grew up taking herbs when I got sick, and like I had such a different experience as far as most FDNs go with our background personally and our health journeys. So I was pretty well versed in like functional health and holistic health because of my mom. But you know what? It's kind of funny because I was a little bit of a classic teenager, like, you think what your parents are doing isn't that cool. And so it wasn't until I started working for her, I needed a job, and I was like, I guess I can work for her. She needs somebody to work in her clinic. And that's when I saw firsthand, like, oh, these people are coming after seeing all these specialists in Houston with these complex situations. They come here, they're told everything's normal with their regular lab testing through regular doctors or specialists. But then my mom was looking at it from a functional perspective, from an optimal range perspective, and all these things. And so then lo and behold, these people would be getting better. And I'm like, oh, I guess she kind of knows what she's doing. This is interesting. And maybe she's not all like woo woo, whatever. And so that's when I really started taking it seriously and getting so intrigued. And the reason why we actually started doing thermography in the first place was because my grandmother passed away from breast cancer. It was a very traumatic thing for my mom to go through. She passed away. My grandmother passed away when I was about 1 year old. So my mom was like postpartum and all these hormones going on. And then like she loses her mom. And at the time, she had been getting mammograms regularly. And I think when they detected it, it was maybe like stage 3 or something. It was already like pretty progressed. And so it just kind of opened my mom's eyes to kind of questioning, like, okay, we're calling this early detection, but it wasn't for my mom. So what does that mean? Like, is there anything else we can be doing to be more proactive here? And that's when she learned about thermography, and she added the equipment, and she went and got certified and trained. And then, so she was already doing it in her office for a couple of years before I came onto the scene. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So I went out to Florida and got my certification done, and then was able to start working for her in that role as a thermographer. And then fast forward, like 2014, she retired, and she was like, girl, you are helping me run my business. Like, the clients love you. Like, everybody, they want to keep coming to you for thermography. Like, let's think about you doing this moving forward without me. And so she really, like, honestly built me up from being nervous to make a phone call, fast forward to like kicking off my own business with her, support and blessing. And so it's just been like such a journey, but that's kind of how I got into all of this. And then what ended up connecting me with FDN was I for years, like, okay, 2014, I'm just doing thermography. I'm staying in my lane. I'm like, scanning people. They're getting their results, and they're like, okay, I have all this gut inflammation, or I have my thyroid came up, or some issue came up on thermography. What do I do now? And with all the understanding I had from working with my mom, I wanted people to get connected to good quality providers, right? So I was trying to refer out, and over the years, I started to realize like some of these people are paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to see these really expensive functional doctors. No offense, but like it was just, and then I would see their results, like the impact wasn't really like amazing. And I was getting frustrated for my clients. I genuinely like, I see these ladies for years. I built relationships with these people, and I just wanted them to be helped at the end of the day. And I wanted easier access to advanced functional labs that you and I have the privilege and honor to have access to, like a lot of people don't. And so I love that FDN is making this more accessible. Like, people need to be empowered with knowledge and understanding of what's going on in their body. And one of my friends, she told me about the FDN program because I was looking for something, because I was sick and tired of my clients not getting real help from like a holistic, the whole person view. Like, I would send someone and they would just be helped with their thyroid. And I'm like, but you have gut issues. Like, what's going on? So that was the missing piece for me, for my clients. Like, wow, now I can help people from a whole body, whole systems, point of view. And it really changed everything. And it's just made it so much easier to help people, honestly. So, and then through the program, I do the labs on myself and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm a little bit of a hot mess than I thought I was. So it was a blessing to me for my own health. My hormones in my gut were a disaster, but now they're not. So like we got things taken care of, and I was my own like preventive example of like, you don't have to feel horrible to need a little bit of work. And I'm the preventive type of person. So like, I'd much rather know sooner before I'm falling apart. If my hormones are messed up and my gut's messed up, like let's deal with it now. And I have a lot of clients that are that way too, which is really fun to work with.
Oh, there's so many things to hit on here. I'm going to
Sorry.
No. This is amazing. I'm trying to figure out the best route, but I just want to say a few small things about each thing. So one, I think it's an amazing origin story, right? Of course, it's incredibly sad what happened to your grandmother, but the fact that you guys have turned this into the best possible situation that you can. I'm always amazed by the individuals that come on this podcast and do that. I think that's the only point. And I'm a walking self-help book, as you probably know from having me on Facebook. But one of my favorite quotes is that the final stage of healing is using what happened to us to help others. And to me, it's actually the only way to do it, because you can sit in the misery of it, you can sit in the loss, or you say, what did we learn from this and how can we help impact other people's lives? And then it's a blessing. It actually ends up being a blessing to be able to impact people in such a positive way. But also, again, anyway, you're right that it is a unique origin story. There's only been a few people on that are FDNs that had kind of a parental influence in some way or another into this natural space. And it is funny because usually it's the mom and usually she's some type of naturopathic physician. So I think that's very cool.
Moms are amazing. Just going to say that.
They are. They make the best practitioners too. That's for darn sure. Nothing like a mom on a mission. But I want to kind of transition to something that you also said about like why you got interested in FDN, because this is why we need so many people out here doing this work. And guys, it's not a commercial for FDN. You can do FDN or you can do one of the other amazing functional programs out there. Just do something, because what you saw, Rebekah, where you're like, oh, these people are going to these practitioners, they're spending thousands and not really getting the results that one would expect for spending that type of money. That is the exact same wording that Reed Davis used when he was starting this over 20 years ago. He said he was in the chiropractor's office, so he's in another type of holistic health office, right? And he saw these individuals that said, I've worked with 5 or 10 people. Each of them are $1,000 to $10,000 each, and you're still not better. And Reed just looked at them and said, oh, what a ripoff, right? In his Reed voice. So this is still happening to people, and it shows how much work we really do need to do in this space. There's millions and millions of people that need our help. So whether it's FDN or something else out there, if you feel like you're missing something in your life and you're interested in this space and you want to do something more, we encourage you, get involved in one way or another. Anyway, I want to talk about some of the stuff that you found in the labs. I'm going to save that later for the podcast, if that's okay. What I want to focus on for right now, for those that don't understand what thermography is, maybe like the host that's interviewing you right now, if he didn't fully understand it, talk to me like I'm 5. What do you do in thermography?
So thermography is a non-invasive medical imaging tool where we can map out the heat patterns on the surface of the skin. What's interesting is people often ask me, like, how deep does thermography see? And what's funny about that is that that's what we're used to. We're used to MRIs and ultrasounds and x-rays emitting something from the machine to go through your body to image the structures. But thermography is basically using the nervous system. How this works is your nervous system internally controls the surface temperature based on what's going on inside. So it's extremely subtle temperature shifts. We measure to 1/10 of a degree. So it's extremely detailed, subtle things that you don't necessarily feel, but there's going to be little fluctuations in heat when there's increased blood flow, decreased blood flow, changes in the function of an organ, inflammation, lymph congestion, nerve function issues. So if you have ever felt like your hands are kind of feeling tingly because you're having nerve issues, your hands are going to be cooler than normal on the scan. So a lot of people are like, oh, you're looking for hot spots, right? And I'm like, no, we're looking for anything out of the normal temperature range for that area of the body. And so one easy way to explain that is like with our blood work, where we want to see certain markers within a certain range. Well, same thing with different areas of the body. It's normal for us to have an ear canal reading of a certain temperature range. Now, if you're hotter than that, then we know there's increased inflammatory activity in the ear canals. Or if it's on both sides, I typically view that as more of a systemic internal increased immune activation going on. So there's a lot of different like patterns we're looking for on the thermography scan. We look at blood flow, we look for inflammation, dysfunction of organs, things like that. But it's very complementary to structural imaging. So it's not going to replace structural scans like a CT. Those give us details that are structural. So again, another analogy for this concept would be looking at a building. And a lot of the scans that we use are looking at the structures like the architecture, like the architectural blueprint, right? That's what we're looking at with those scans. With thermography, it's more similar to like the electrical flow happening in that building, like the Wi-Fi and the electrical activity going through the building. That's more like what we're looking at. So it's a very different type of technology and a different perspective of evaluating the body, but there's no radiation, there's no contrast, there's no downsides whatsoever. It's completely safe, and it brings such a different, unique perspective of what could be going on in your body. So I love it. It's really awesome. So hopefully that was good enough for a 5-year-old. I don't know.
No, it was, I'm actually laughing because I'm like, I can tell you've had to explain this to many clients and patients in the past, but you're just like, all right, Ev, here we go. And you went into the whole pitch of it. And you have the analogy. So no, that was perfect. So 2 follow-up questions for you. First, you actually mentioned the inflammation side, because the first thing going off in my head was like, okay, if if like you break your foot or something, sometimes the area will swell and you actually can put your hand near it and you can feel that the inflammation is causing this heat. Mm-hmm. So you guys can pick up something much more subtle than that, but that's conceptually similar to what we're talking about here. Exactly. Like someone gets injured.
That would be an acute example. And so like on the spectrum of findings, that would be like really extreme looking on our scan. Whereas we can pick up those really subtle inflammatory patterns where you don't feel any inflammation going on in your colon, and we take a picture and it's like lit up and we're like, okay, right. I don't know what's going on in there, but the colon is inflamed and we need to address this. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Okay, then my second question is thermography actually used to directly diagnose anything, or is it a tool similar to like how our functional labs, they don't diagnose anything, but my gosh, they change people's lives. So is it more like that?
Yes. So it's not diagnostic. Like no one's going to come into our office and we're going to tell you, okay, you have Hashimoto's, or okay, you have celiac disease. Like we're not going to be diagnosing any specific conditions. Mm-hmm. But what we can do is we're basically getting a head to toe assessment non-invasively. Like, is there something, any areas of the body that need more attention? Especially areas that you don't necessarily feel like. People will come in and they'll have so much, like, let's say you do blood work. We have some referrals from doctors where they get blood work done and they see their patient has really high CRP levels, which is an inflammatory marker, but it's non-specific. So they're like, well, where is this coming from in the body? Like, who knows? So they will send their patient to us to get a head to toe scan and see what areas on the scan are the most inflamed, so that it narrows down, like, what kind of diagnostics does this patient even need at this point? Like, what direction do we need to evaluate first? So here's a really cool story. We had a patient that was having these really odd episodes of illness. He would get fevers and chills and like out of nowhere just be so sick for a few days, and then it would go away, and then it kept coming back. And this was for years and really interrupting his life and his work. And he ended up connecting with a really amazing functional doctor here in Houston, who I love. And she did a whole gamut of tests on him and she couldn't figure it out. So she sends him to us to like, can y'all see anything? And so it was so interesting because usually when I do a scan, I can see multiple areas that need to be addressed. But he was so in tune, like his functional doctor helped him so much. Like he was so healthy overall, but still struggling. When we did the scan, almost everything looked great. I was like, this is shocking. You actually have so much going for you, but your mouth is so inflamed. That is the one area that is like, what the heck's going on there? So he ended up getting a CBCT scan And so one of the benefits of doing the thermography with our office is we'll go through the results in detail. We'll refer you to good quality people. We'll make sure you're getting the right diagnostics from here and get the right assessment. And so we sent him to a really good biological dentist. They did the CBCT, they did some testing. He had some just gnarly root canal infections that he had no symptoms, no pain, nothing. And regular dental x-rays, typically, they don't always see the infections. The CBCT can miss sometimes, but they're a lot more reliable. And so it did, thankfully, pick up on that. Ever since he had those addressed, he's totally fine. He's completely healthy. Everything's like optimal. So that's just like one example, but it's definitely not diagnostic, but like an important assessment and helping to kind of navigate these situations. But
well, correct me if I'm wrong. I would imagine this goes both ways. So in some cases, you have a doctor referring to you guys. Are there other times where you do the scan and then, let's take the situation of something maybe like breast cancer. Are you getting clues that then indicate, hey, I really want you to go and get checked with this XYZ person to get a diagnosis or rule it out?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And people will ask me, they're always tempted to like try to press me for, like, let's say they have colon inflammation come up on their scan. They're like, well, does it look like colon cancer? And I'm like, it's a screening. So it's not diagnostic. It doesn't give me that answer. So, I mean, I will tell people if it looks more on the mild side of things or if it looks more on the severe side of things, because I've been doing this for 15, 16 years now. So I've seen so many thousands of scans. Like, I'm happy to give them the context of, like, on average, where you kind of fall on that spectrum. But I always tell people, like, this is not going to replace follow up with the right diagnostic tools. This is just telling you, hey, this is worthwhile to investigate. Like, this is something that, is clearly inflammatory for you, going to deteriorate your health over time. So you have the opportunity now. Do we want to do, I take a neutral stance. I give people options. I educate them on the different routes they could go. I say, you know what, you're in that age group, your doctor, you're 50 years old. Your doctor's probably told you about a colonoscopy at this point. Maybe consider that, or Cologuard Plus, kind of rule the big dogs out would probably be a good idea at this point. If they're really young and they don't have any risk factors and all that. And then I'm like, the Cologuard's an option, colonoscopy is an option. But I always tell people, like, it's not going to assess your microbiome. It's not going to assess your digestive function. It's, all this inflammation in the gut. Maybe you have nothing polyp-wise, right? Or, colonoscopy findings are squeaky clean. That's great. But it's not going to replace, like, food sensitivity testing, GI map, microbiome, that type of information. They all work together, and we have to just kind of make sure people understand, like, what the pros and cons of each tool and where to go from there. But I ultimately leave it up to them. It's not my body. I'm not choosing for them, but I'm just kind of laying out different routes they could take this information and talk to their doctor about.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong then. So in our perfect world as FDNs, we know, I mean, you even brought this up where, you felt overall fine, but there was plenty to work on the labs. This is so common. If you run the labs on anyone, we're going to find areas for improvement, which is amazing. That's like universally the case when you utilize the labs on anyone that lives in America. That's for darn sure. Hopefully it's not true for other countries, but in America, anyone I've ever ran them on, even if they feel overall okay, there's something to work on. Certainly it's true for people that don't feel good. But what I'm getting at is, in our perfect world, we would have everyone run some of these labs just preventatively and to look at stuff. Is it really, in your opinion, is it the same with thermography, where I'm listening to this sounds, again, it's not invasive, doesn't sound dangerous, sounds like it could be a great indicator of clues for other things to look at, but maybe there's just not enough awareness around it. Is it kind of like that then?
Yes. Yes.
So everyone should be doing this.
I agree, for sure. I think that there's so much opportunity, because we've had people who are functional doctors themselves come in. We've had health practitioners come in. We've had people who work in health food stores, or they're reflexologists, like all different types of professionals in the health space, even, that are trying to be health conscious and, live as healthy as they can. And they come in, and even then, sometimes I'm shocked at, like, how much inflammation is going on. And I think that sometimes, like, they may not realize or feel it going on. And so I feel like thermography gives us a visual, like insight that is unique compared to other things. Like labs are wonderful. I'm not going to give up either tool. I want my labs, but I also want my thermography because I can't imagine, like, it's so helpful, and it really helps highlight things that you don't feel going on. For instance, like my office manager, she was having migraines and her sinuses came up really inflamed. She had zero sinus symptoms, but her migraines were coming from her sinus inflammation and issues going on there. And then we've had people where, they have severe pain in their leg and they don't realize it's actually coming from their back. So like just different assessments and analysis that is unique. Like it's hard to get that from a lab test, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll be fairly close to you driving wise in just about a month here. And something is telling me it'd make for a really interesting kind of live-ish podcast, or maybe like,
oh my gosh.
I come down, stand me up, and then we'll be, I don't mind ever being transparent on here. I think one of the things I always want to encourage at FDN is like, this is a constant journey. And if you're trying to operate in our modern world, and you have the genetic makeup of some of us, and I know that we always say, wait, genes aren't an ultimatum. I get that. But obviously some of us do have genetics which make us more susceptible to the crap that happens in our modern world. This is why my dad somehow, God bless him, at 57 years old, can go out, smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, work 7 days a week outside, eats whatever he wants. And quite frankly, I think if I had to live the way that he did, he would outlive me, even though he's 57 years old already, which is crazy, right? So there is a genetic component. There's probably a component of how healthy the person was when they were in their developmental years. I think there's a case for that as well. But my point is, I got exposed to mold 2 years ago. I didn't know I was being exposed for a year. I just ran tests recently, and some of my or mycotoxins were off the chart. So I'm doing some protocols for this right now. But I've said on here many times, I don't feel 100%. Certainly, I'm not able to operate in my crazy Ev way that I like to operate with. I love all the work that I do. So yes, I work quote unquote a lot, but it's because I love it. I'm sure if we run this thing, there's going to be tons of stuff that comes up. So I'd love to do that with you, and we'll talk afterwards, but I mean this seriously. I'd love to drive down and we can get some
That'd be
content.
awesome.
Sweet. Anyway, I kind of want to transition here. I don't want it to be a rough transition, but it was actually something I've mentioned this many times on the podcast. I like to know what the key takeaways are for the person in their perfect world of the podcast. And one of your key takeaways was mammograms may be overpromising and under-delivering. So the reason I call this possibly a rough transition is because we weren't necessarily talking about this. But I would like to know how mammograms, thermography, all of this kind of has a place in the world of breast cancer. And then where do you believe the mammograms are under-promising and over-delivering? Or sorry, vice versa.
Yeah. So for me, I feel like the reason why I wanted that to be a key takeaway is because there's been, probably at this point, decades of that one message of breast cancer prevention boiling down to going and getting your mammograms. And first of all, as an FDN, it's like, okay, well, there's a lot more to health than just going and getting an x-ray. I mean, gosh, we could serve women a lot better than just that being the main message. So it's gotten to the point with that messaging being so dominant in the breast cancer world. It's gotten to the point where, like, some patients have shared with me that their doctors almost have this concept that mammograms prevent breast cancer. Like they're just so married to mammograms being the solution. And I'm like, you know what, guys, it's 2025. We have a lot of tools available. They may not all be covered by insurance, unfortunately, but we have other technology available that at the very least is adjunctive to a mammogram and augments the benefits or the capabilities of mammograms that women are missing out on, to be honest, because they're not informed about it. They don't know that there are options or tools that they can use either alongside or, intermittently here and there. I feel that, especially as more and more research has come out for women, particularly with dense breast tissue, it's something that unfortunately needs to be, it needs to be talked about more. So that was one of the main points I wanted to bring up. And I don't know if you have any specific questions about what that looks like or stats on that, I'm happy to share like
Yeah.
statistics, research.
Well, I always want to make sure I'm wording these carefully. So let me just state this. I should put this disclaimer on. I didn't do this today. I apologize. Obviously, none of this is medical advice. We're not telling you not to get a mammogram. We're not telling you to replace it with thermography. She has not even said anything close to that. So when I ask these questions, know that I am having all of that in mind. I'm just kind of wondering, like, again, I'm not a guy, right? I've never been recommended a mammogram, but it is something I've heard throughout the years often enough, like you should be doing this. So then in your opinion, I mean, really should people be doing this as often as it's recommended? Do you think they should be doing it at all from a preventative standpoint? Like, what is your opinion on it? Again, not medical advice.
Right. So for mammograms, I do feel like every single imaging tool has its place and has its value. And mammograms do have a unique capability of detecting microcalcifications that is very difficult for other types of imaging tools to be reliable with. And so, like, for instance, ultrasound can pick up microcalcifications, but once they're a little bit larger in size. So mammograms have a unique ability to see that aspect, which most of the time, thankfully, they do come back benign. I think it's 9 out of 10 times they're benign, but some of them are malignant or what they call stage 0 DCIS, which is unfortunately kind of a controversial area, controversial subject where that's where people make the argument that mammograms are overdiagnosing because women are diagnosed with stage 0 DCIS. It's not invasive yet. And so some doctors are like, that's not really cancer until it's invasive. So this is where like people start to get mastectomies and chemo, radiation, tamoxifen treatment for something that's so early on that some doctors are arguing this is over treatment, over diagnosis. And it's a really touchy area, right? Very personal, touchy subject. So I'm not saying one way or the other. I think my main goal is to encourage people to start using more than one tool. So I actually tell my own clients, like, don't just do thermography. Don't just do mammograms. Don't just do ultrasounds. Like, I feel like a lot of women, they just want to be in one camp and they want to like, this is my place where I'm going to do breast imaging. And at our office, we do thermography and ultrasound because we know the importance of structural imaging and we know the limitations of thermography and that they complement each other. Like sometimes we see issues on thermography before it's picked up on an ultrasound or a mammogram and vice versa. So it's like, there's not one tool. I wish there was a crystal ball that like was the solution and the angels are singing, but like, there's not one tool that's 100% detection rate. So we've got thermography that's on average 89% detection rate. We've got ultrasounds that it depends heavily on the experience of the sonographer herself, right, or himself. That's the quality of that sonographer, but that can be in the 60s up to the 80s percentile of detection rate. We have really experienced sonographers in our office to make sure that the detection rate's higher because they're just better. And then with mammography, the really wild thing about mammograms is that they can be the detection rate can be so wide between 98% detection rate for some women, while it can be as low as, in the 40 percentile range for other women. The reason is dense breast tissue. So if you have fatty tissue, it's like clear as day. You can see cancer on there, easy peasy. You get a mammogram, that's reliable as reliable as you can possibly get, right? But for women with really dense breast tissue, now it could be, there's a spectrum. So there can be kind of your mid-level density. There can be also extremely dense. So there's a little bit of a spectrum there. The closer you get to extremely dense, the lower that detection rate is going to be. So that's what I'm adamant about. That's what I want to be proactive about, sharing that message with women to know that just because you had a mammogram, like, please know where you fall on that density scale so that you can make informed decisions moving forward on how much you want to utilize other tools as well. And then the other part of that is also thermography looks at our breast health. It looks at our lymph. It looks at our inflammation. It can show signs of like too much estrogenic activity. So I always tell women, hey, if we see something concerning on here and we follow up with an ultrasound or a mammogram and it We rule out cancer, kind of like the colonoscopy. We ruled out the colon cancer with the colonoscopy. It doesn't mean things are perfect. We still want to do that GI map and food sensitivities and get your gut inflammation down. Same thing with utilizing the thermography to say, hey, let's rule out breast cancer, but let's come back and keep going from there and be preventive and proactive, because there's lymph congestion. There's way too much blood flow indicating an estrogen dominant type scenario or a estrogen pathway metabolism issue. So that's when we start to get more into the functional preventive side, is only with thermography. I'm not going to see that information on a mammogram or an ultrasound or an MRI. It's just for diagnosing breast cancer, which is obviously very important. That's not something that, we want to play around with.
Right.
At the same time, there's this whole opportunity with women where we can do better. Like, we can go beyond just checking for breast cancer and sending her on her way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's.
Well, guys, it's such a great episode. I feel like I have more than enough to ask here, but I always like to throw you guys in if you want. This is a very important topic. So if you do have any questions for Rebekah, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll happily get to some of them if we can. I see quite a handful of you on, which is awesome. Not really surprising with this topic either. So, okay, with all of this said, I want to jump ahead real quick because I'm not going to have enough time for all of this. We might have to have you back again if that's all right. So I wanted to know, though, this is something I had to get to today. Breast implants. Are you seeing people with them? Do they seem to be at a higher risk for breast cancer? This is just Ev thoughts, Ev questions. And if not breast cancer, are you seeing more issues on the thermography side of things for those with breast implants?
Yes. So I would say for women with breast implants, I'm not seeing a clear indicator that they're at higher risk for breast cancer. But what happens is they're a little bit harder to evaluate with imaging tools. So I do recommend women who have implants to do thermography and ultrasound, just to kind of assess things from a couple different perspectives. And that goes across ideally for everyone, but especially like certain cases, I'm like, you really want to do both tools to get both perspectives. Anyone with personal health, family history or personal history of breast cancer, anyone with really dense breast tissue, unfortunately, they're at higher risk of developing breast cancer. Just that one factor alone, it's actually a stronger indicator of developing breast cancer than family history, just FYI. So having dense breast tissue is an important thing to know about if that's something you have. And then the other thing is for women with breast implants, I don't necessarily, again, I don't see them having like more likelihood of breast cancer, but I do see where with the thermography, it's so helpful for me to see what does their lymphatic health look like and what does their overall inflammation load look like. I have had the privilege of seeing thermography scans before and after explant, and women who've had BII, breast implant illness, and going through the detox period and doing anti-inflammatory support, and seeing the impact even on other areas of their body, like their gut inflammation improving, their back inflammation improving, their lymphatic system improving. So I've seen that. I've also seen women with breast implants that look totally fine. So I don't think it's 100% every woman with implants is screwed, but it's like, it is very helpful for me to see visually what is the impact from the implants potentially. And one key thing that I see with women who are probably going through some level of BII is when their chest itself is fine. It looks cool. Like it's not the actual implants that are inflamed, but it's like all the way around is just like inflamed. And it's so interesting. And sometimes I see signs of autonomic immune dysfunction, like that chronic fight or flight state, the chronic inflammatory response. I see this like cool pattern on the back of their neck. And that's a pattern that we see on thermography that it's not specific. It's non-specific finding, but it's anytime I see that pattern on someone's scan, I'm like, okay, you really need to work with someone who's functional and holistic and looking at all the pieces of the puzzle together, because your whole system is just depleted and overwhelmed and overstimulated. We need to look at hormones and gut and like all the things that FDN does. So it's pretty interesting.
All right, thanks. I'm glad I asked that. And I appreciate you saying as well that, because this is a very delicate one that I got to be careful with when I bring people on that have had explant surgery and all that kind of stuff. And The issue is there's so much fear mongering around it that I'm like, all right, we're going to kill these women even faster by scaring the heck out of them every time they look in the mirror and remember that
It's
they
not
got the
healthy
surgery.
either.
Yeah, like it's one potential stressor out of the many that all of us can choose to engage with, right? Again, my dad smokes. My dad's fine. I might cause more stress to him by trying to make him stop at this point. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Same thing with silver fillings too. Like I know
Sure.
it's toxic regardless, but for some people they're having more reaction on their scan than other people. So I think to your point, genetics do play a role, and different, aspects of our health. Maybe our microbiome makes us handle things better. I don't know. Maybe our environment is a little healthier and we can handle things better. There's a lot of layers to why someone's more reactive to something and not. But
Well, and clearly we have a capacity to handle stress. What's
yeah.
actually more amazing about human beings, in my opinion, is how long we can be alive while being at significantly suboptimal levels of health. Like most human beings do not feel great nowadays, unfortunately. Like they have something going on. It's more amazing that not everyone, but the majority of us can do this for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, still have kids. The kids come out half decent. You know what I mean? Like we're able to raise them. They can do the same thing. Of course, I'm being funny. I'm not trying to make fun of it because this is not everyone's story, but it is amazing that we can get to 7 billion people doing what we've done. And so we always just need to think of, hey, pick your stress. And frankly, yeah, I don't want to scare the heck out of everyone that has done this because I imagine any surgery is pretty major. And then it's kind of a shift in identity, right? It's not something that people don't typically notice. Your family and friends notice that you did this. So I'd have to imagine it's hard for people that choose to do that surgery the first time and then to go back 5-10 years later, be like, nope, I'm done. I'm taking them out. I mean, that's a whole,
And it's
that's
so
a whole thing
expensive,
there.
and to think, well, what if I do all this and nothing changes and I'm still
Exactly.
miserable? And then I'm recovering from a surgery. Yay.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know?
Yeah, so whatever we do, it's like if you guys have already made those decisions, that's fine enough. Own that. You did it for a reason, and hopefully the reason that you did it, the stress is actually now lower, because maybe there was some self-consciousness or whatever it might have been before. But the time that it's important, in my opinion, is if yes, there are mystery symptoms going on in your life that you've addressed a bunch of other areas and it's not getting better, maybe that's the time to reflect. But we don't want to cause a nocebo effect where we're so stressed about it all the time that we make ourselves have quote unquote breast implant illness that did not necessarily need to exist in our case. So, okay. Just wondering there. And then I want to go back for a second because this was super, super important. You talked about something that you said admittedly is controversial, but you even brought up that doctors are sometimes fighting for this as well. So were you saying that when sometimes they do these mammograms, there is a detectable level almost that's like so low that some people are debating like should we be doing the treatments, whereas like other doctors are like, okay, hey, we see some amount here, or what they believe to be some amount, we are going to either cut your breasts off or put you through chemotherapy. Like that's currently happening right now.
Yes. So because there's so much fear with the C word, cancer, that once you give a diagnosis that includes the word carcinoma, it's, going to elicit some really extreme reactions for a lot of people. And doctors, they are going to want to really eliminate any and all signs of cancer, regardless of like, I don't know that I think what's happened initially with breast cancer, and just so you know, a little bit of history, back in the day, it wasn't uncommon for women to be having lumps removed that weren't even breast cancer. They were normal benign cysts that would never be any problem. But back in that time, they weren't sure and they were just removing things. And it was very traumatic for people. I even had a patient who had both of her breasts removed in her, I think she was 18 or 20, because they thought it was cancer. And looking back, she's like, oh, it was just like benign lumps. And this whole time I thought I had cancer. And then the family feels like they have breast cancer, and they're, like there's just a lot of fear, like you were talking about with BII, and like the mental load that takes when you're believing that you're like broken or something, so there's a whole toll that can happen. So I think what started out, like we've slowly over time started to reel ourselves in as far as like going bonkers with any lump and bump. We're better than that now, but we're still like in this gray area where some doctors are concerned that, this DCIS, they don't always progress. It's not linear, right? They're not all breast cancers in stage 0 are going to go to 1, 2, 3, 4. And so the question is like, okay, well, do we give patients the option to monitor? Is that ethical? Do we just go ahead and treat as if it, across the board, not give them that option? I think lately there's been more acceptance or like openness to monitoring stage 0. But then some women, like, I think it's a personal thing. I think some women, it's more fear and anxiety inducing to monitor. They'd rather just be done with it, right? But I think for people who are a little bit more involved in the cancer world, like Heather Cohen, and I'm not sure if I said her name right, but I think it's Cohen, but where they're constantly working with cancer patients, they see that it's not just removal, right? There's stem cells, there's a whole terrain, a systemic terrain issue that needs to be addressed. So we unfortunately can't just cut something out and be done with it. And I know that, again, some of them are being put on tamoxifen for 5 years. There's all kinds of health issues with prescriptions like that. They might be going into having hormone issues and menopause-like issues because of that drug. So it's a very challenging area of medicine, I think, where like Dr. Jen Simmons is a big advocate of QT imaging and doing away with mammograms, which I think like we got to be a little bit cautious about throwing it away completely. But that's one of the downsides, I would say, that certain countries have shied away from doing mammograms as a whole screening program because they've seen some of the harms from regular mammogram screening, and those countries have seen more improvement for breast cancer patients from the treatment side of things. So like our deaths from breast cancer, our chances of surviving breast cancer and everything are so much higher now because of the treatment improving and getting better, not necessarily mammograms being the savior, like
Gotcha.
say they are. Now, one of the statistics, for example, where they talk about mammograms reducing mortality by 25%, it's like one woman, or it is like, I forget the I'm going blank now, of course, but it was like out of 1,000 women, there's one person that, died from breast cancer. And now there's like, slightly less. Like once you pull apart statistics a little bit, then you learn where they came up with the 25%. It's not 25% of all women. You know what I mean?
I got you.
If I'm explaining.
You've been rattling off amazing information for 47 minutes. I think the going blank on one thing's all right. No worries. And we know what you meant. May I steal you for an extra 5 minutes just because I want to make sure? Oh, cool. This is a great episode. So let me get to the audience questions that I see. There are 2 right now. I'm sorry, guys. I'm actually not going to be able to do any more audience questions outside of these. So please, when we shout out where to follow Rebekah, go follow her. And I'm sure you could ask her some stuff there if you'd like. All right. So do you have to continue to scan regularly? This came up specifically for thermography. Would this be like a once a year thing, every few years?
Yes. So I always recommend once a year for at minimum breast screening for women once a year. For young people, like if you don't have any issues that came up on your full body scan, which is rare, but like, hey, let's say you come in, your full body scan looks great. You could probably go a couple years, right? It's not going to change drastically within that time period. But if you have something, let's say your gut inflammation comes up or your heart or something, you might want to come back. You can come back in 6 months to see if your protocol has been efficient enough for where you want to be, or you can come back in a year and see what things are looking like. I kind of customize what the follow-up would be like. But as far as general health screening, once a year is like the standard.
Okay. How do you find a thermographist? Is that the word?
Thermographer. So I like to share the directory site with people. It's thermologyonline.org, and you can find a clinic through there.
All right, Tracy, if you're able to, thermologyonline.org, if we could get that in the chat for the folks, that would be amazing. Only if you have a second. Thank you. Okay, so I want to talk to you directly about any like client case studies or client cool stories that have come up over the last 4 or 5 years of you being an FDN. So it's really interesting to see that you've now integrated this all together. Are you working with clients most of the time? Or are you in the clinic most of the time? Like what takes up more time for you? Or they've kind of combined, I guess.
Yeah, it's combined a lot. So I'm working with my role right now mostly is going over thermography reports with people, looking at ultrasound results, looking at thermography reports, and then giving them kind of the functional perspective on these results and what to do from here. And so I actually have another FDN on my team that helps me with lab review consults and things like that so that we can take on more clients for the deep dives into health with FDN. But that's the majority of my time is working on the business, managing the team, and going over results because that's just my jam.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you, Tracy, for pulling up that link. We're sharing it on the screen for you guys. We'll try to get it in the show notes as well on the audio side if you guys want to click on that. So even if you're focused more on the business side, I would like to ask, I got to ask this at least once. What's like a cool story or amazing testimonial or transformation to the degree that you're able to share from a privacy standpoint over the last several years of being an FDN? I always love to hear about people that like came to us, they're at the end of their rope or they've spent thousands on other practitioners. And then with our system, we were the ones that finally were able to help them. So is there anyone that comes to mind when I say that you're able to share their story a little bit?
Oh, it's so hard to choose. I wish I had like somebody, of course, I'm probably going to think of the best like example after our call, but just off the top of my head, like some of them have been women who were in so much pain from arthritis, like crippling pain, where we just did some basic FDN labs and started removing some inflammatory things and building up the body, coaching up the body, and that kind of thing, like an FDN. And just getting those phone calls of like, oh my God, I feel so much better now. And some of them, like it's been started out with a thermography scan where their gut was super inflamed. We did a GI map and they had just raging inflammation and gut issues, and we were able to get that fixed. And then their energy is up, their acne is going down. It's like it's always a whole system improvement. Like this, Evan, like when you start working on one thing, all the things get better. Like their sleep is better, their skin is better, their joints are better, their energy is better. Anxiety, depression, like so many things. And like we've had some women come in where they don't have any symptoms and they have, breast cancer on their thermography scan. We don't know it's breast cancer till we follow up, but like they went and got a 3D mammogram and the mammogram didn't show it at all. So like there's definitely been some really critical findings that we've had with our team and how we assess things. But I absolutely I can't ever go back from like doing FDN. Like it's just such a joy and helping people, from the upstream issues. Like, let's really solve this. Let's really find out what your deficiencies and toxicities are. And it's so simple. Like once you just start giving the body what it needs and nourishing it the right way, the body does the magical part. The body is really the miracle that happens. But it's really just doing our homework well and assessing well and looking for those important clues. And honestly, like so many variety. Like I don't have a niche. It's so many different types of health issues that we can help people with. So I love it.
That's amazing. And that also makes sense just for the FDNs listening. If you're one of the rare FDNs that has some type of in-person thing, that is one of the only times where I would totally back you that the niche thing does not matter as much.
It does matter. It does matter. As soon as I said it, I was like, I shouldn't have said that because
in an in-person
clinic matters.
Do you think it matters as much as an in-person with an in-person clinic?
I think that it's important to have a focused message. Okay. I will say. Yeah.
I get you. Well, I'm only saying this as someone who had an in-person business. I found that we got people coming in for the treatment, which was red light therapy, right? And who does that attract? Well, it attracts people that are holistically minded, that have skin issues, gut issues, pain, insomnia, all these kinds of things. So we ended up, I wasn't just being nice, by the way. I genuinely do not actually think if you're in person that the niche thing matters as much. I couldn't argue that yes, having a focused message is probably not going to be slightly better. But like online, I almost look at it as essential. Whereas in person, it's like if you can talk about the FDN side well, I think that's how like naturopathic doctors work. They don't necessarily have a niche per se, but they're kind of known to be these people that can help naturally. But you would still back that the focused messaging is really helpful even in person.
I think so.
Okay.
I think it does help, just so that people aren't so overwhelmed. Like when it comes to sales and stuff, like having too many options almost
That's
makes
true.
people just less likely to buy in. So,
That is true. Awesome.
yeah.
You are a fantastic guest. I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I wish we had more time to do more stuff. And so we'll probably have to, maybe our second podcast will be me visiting in person. We'll get the scan. We'll figure some
Oh
stuff
my
out.
gosh.
That'd be
Yes.
so cool. So where can people find you, both the online side of things, but also your guys' clinic? Because Houston's a major city. Again, Austin's not that far. We have people that listen all over the country and the world. So I know someone's going to end up visiting because of this. So where can they find you guys?
So our office is in Northwest Houston. You can find us through our website. It's bloomwc.com. And then our Instagram is bloom.wc. And of course, we have a Facebook page as well. And we actually have like a private Facebook community group, which is really cool that's where Ashley and I will do live talks on different health topics and share different labs and things that we're doing. So like you said, the case studies, and we kind of get into more details there. So if you're like curious what we're doing with clients and how we go about things, you can check out our private group too.
All right, Rebekah, final question for you on the show. This does not need to be about breast cancer at all. It can be just general health stuff. That's typically how most people answer it, even if they had a specific topic for the show. So the question for you is, if we could give you a magic wand, you could wave it and you could get every single one of our viewers and listeners to do just one thing for their health.
Mhm.
What would it be? And I'm particularly interested in this with you got almost 20 years of experience directly, and then you got decades of listening to mama's wisdom. Maybe sometimes listening more than not, who knows, maybe as you got older. So I'd love to know, with all those years of accumulated knowledge, what is the one thing you get our viewers or listeners to start or stop doing?
Whew. Okay, so it's so hard, for an FDN, because what do? We do all the things. But I will say, I think that there is a lot of power in gratitude. So if we are kind of, to touch back on what you were saying with people being so stressed about their health issues, or, implants or whatever, like I think in the health space, it's really easy for us to get anxious and fearful. And I think gratitude is such a powerful, underutilized tool that can shift us out of that state. And if we really embrace it and focus on that, and not just like say, I'm grateful for, but like close our eyes and feel that gratitude, it's amazing what can happen, I feel, to shift us out of that. And I think we can make better choices when we come out of a place of that energy.
I hope people take this stuff seriously. I never take it for granted when someone comes on and they have 15 years plus very technical experience in their own stuff, and they had a mom in this space that was doing this for decades, and that's the one thing that they recommend out of all the stuff that they've accumulated. I know that some of those, because this stuff comes up a lot, and it can seem simple enough, like, okay, gratitude, got it. It's like, why don't you actually humble yourself enough for a second to think this is the person that did all this work already, and that is the one thing they want to leave you with? Maybe there's a little more to that than would meet the eye. Rebekah, again, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to getting to meet you in person, and this was a great episode, so we
Thank
appreciate you being
you.
here.